Imagine lying in bed on a stormy night, whispering a name you should never even think of, only to open your eyes and find him standing in your doorway watching you. What happened next shattered everything I thought I knew about right and wrong. If you're ready to hear the truth about temptation, regret, and the price of forbidden desire, make sure you hit that subscribe button and stay with me, because this is a story you won't forget. The rain that night had a way of creeping into your bones. Cold, relentless, unforgiving. I remember lying there in the old wooden bed, listening to the wind rattle the loose window panes, and feeling more alone than I had in years. My name is Caroline. I'm 46 years old, and I came back to my mother's farm in Vermont thinking I could find peace. Maybe even heal the broken pieces of myself left behind by a bitter divorce. The farm was supposed to be a sanctuary. Acres of wild grass, pine forests that whispered when the breeze came through, a wraparound porch where you could sit for hours and hear nothing but the crickets. But loneliness has a way of twisting even the most peaceful places into something dangerous. And that summer, what started as a quiet escape slowly turned into something else. Something I wasn't prepared for. Sometimes the most dangerous storms are the ones we carry inside. The farm hadn't changed much since I was a girl. The same wraparound porch sagged a little more. The red barn leaned just a bit closer to collapse, and the fields of wild grass stretched out like a sea, untamed and endless. But inside the house, everything felt different. My mother, Linda, was the constant. A woman with hands worn from years of hard work and a heart too big for her own good. She had remarried recently, not long after I left my husband behind in the city. That's when Nathan came into our lives. Nathan was a man of few words, but he carried himself with a kind of quiet strength that made you take notice. He was in his late 50s, but his body was solid, lean from years of working with his hands. There was something rugged about him. The way he wore his worn jeans and flannel shirts, the way his rough voice rumbled low when he spoke. I told myself I was imagining things when I caught my eyes lingering on him too long. The first time I saw him chopping wood by the shed, sweat dripping down his temples, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms inked with fading tattoos. Something inside me shifted. A warning, a whisper, dangerous. I pushed it down, buried it under a mountain of guilt. After all, Nathan was my mother's husband. He had no reason to notice me, and yet, there were moments when I'd catch him glancing at me from across the kitchen, his gaze lingering a fraction too long. Moments when his fingers brushed mine as he passed me a coffee mug, and I felt the electricity snap between us. Small things, harmless things, or so I told myself. Out here in the wide-open emptiness, there were no city lights, no busy streets, no crowds to get lost in, just the three of us, and all the things we weren't saying out loud. Sometimes, isolation doesn't just expose the cracks in your soul. It pries them wide open. It started with glances, small, fleeting things, easy enough to ignore if I tried hard enough. I would catch Nathan looking at me sometimes when he thought I wasn't paying attention. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe he was just being polite. Maybe it was all in my head. But then there were the accidental touches. A hand brushing my lower back as we passed in the narrow hallway. His fingers lingering a beat too long when handing me a jar from the top shelf. The way his voice would drop just a little when he spoke to me. Low, almost intimate, like we were sharing a secret no one else could hear. Out here, in the middle of nowhere, everything felt amplified. The silences were louder. The spaces between words stretched out like elastic, pulling tighter and tighter until it felt like something had to break. I started noticing the way he moved, the way his broad shoulders strained against his shirts when he worked outside, the way the veins in his hands stood out when he gripped a hammer or carried firewood. The nights were the worst. The old house creaked and groaned under the weight of the wind, and I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about things I shouldn't, thinking about him. I hated myself for it. Nathan was my mother's husband. No matter how lonely I was, no matter how long it had been since someone had touched me, there were lines that should never be crossed. But desire has a way of slipping through the cracks of your better judgment, seeping in slowly, until you're drowning in it without even realizing it. One evening, just as the sun dipped low and bathed the farm in gold, I stood on the porch sipping sweet tea, pretending to read a book. Nathan was working near the fence line, shirtless, swinging an axe with slow, deliberate movements. His skin glistened under the fading light, muscles rippling with every swing. I tried not to look. God, I tried. But when he paused to wipe the sweat from his brow and his eyes locked with mine across the field, something inside me broke loose, something dangerous and desperate. And when he smirked, just the faintest curl of his lips, I knew he felt it too. A charge sparked in the heavy summer air between us. Invisible, tangible. I could almost taste it, and deep down, I knew. This was no longer a harmless crush. This was a fuse, and it had already been lit. The storm rolled in fast that night, heavy and angry, battering the old farmhouse with sheets of rain and bursts of thunder that shook the windows. We lost power sometime after dinner, plunging the house into darkness, save for the flickering light of a few candles. Couldn't sleep. The air inside felt thick, heavy with moisture and something else, something restless. I tossed and turned for what felt like hours, my body alive with a need I didn't want to name. The sound of rain hammering against the roof was relentless, drowning out my better judgment. In the dark, alone under the thin sheets, my hands found their way down my body almost without thinking. It was wrong. God, it was wrong. But the loneliness, the need, the memory of Nathan's eyes on mine earlier that afternoon, it all blurred together in the dark. I whispered his name before I even realized what I was doing. A soft, desperate sound, Nathan, carried away by the thunder. And then I opened my eyes. He was there, standing in the doorway, half in shadow, shirtless, rain dripping from his hair onto his bare shoulders. His chest heaved like he'd run up the stairs. His hand gripped the doorframe so tightly his knuckles were white. For a moment, neither of us moved. The only sounds were the storm raging outside and the sharp, staccato beat of my own heart. I could have pulled the covers over myself. I could have turned away, pretended none of this had happened. But I couldn't. Instead, my hand kept moving under the sheets, slow and trembling. A silent, reckless invitation. Nathan's chest rose and fell faster. He took one step into the room, then another, his bare feet soundless on the wooden floor. The look in his eyes wasn't confusion. It wasn't even hesitation. It was hunger. I should have been ashamed. I should have been terrified. But what I felt was heat. Burning, undeniable heat, coursing through every nerve in my body. He stopped just a few feet from my bed, his body tense, coiled tight like a spring about to snap. His voice, when he finally spoke, was rough, barely controlled. "Tell me to leave, Caroline," he rasped. "Say the word, and I'll go." I stared up at him, my breathing shallow, my body aching in ways I hadn't felt in years. And deep down, I knew, if I said nothing, everything would change. Forever. The silence between us felt like a living thing, heavy, electric, alive. Nathan stood at the foot of my bed, every muscle in his body taut, waiting for me. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. The sheets rustled as I slowly sat up, letting them slip from my body, exposing the thin camisole clinging to my skin, damp with sweat and something far more dangerous. Nathan's eyes darkened, his hands flexing at his sides like he was holding himself back by sheer force of will. And still, he didn't move until I gave him a sign. I reached for him, fingers trembling, brushing against the rough skin of his forearm. That one touch was all it took. He moved like a man unleashed, swift, certain, unstoppable. His mouth crashed against mine, desperate, devouring. The kiss wasn't sweet. It was raw, fierce, a clash of hunger and years of loneliness boiling over. I gasped into him, my hands tangling in the wet strands of his hair as he pulled me closer, lifting me effortlessly against his chest. The bed creaked under our weight as he laid me down, covering my body with his own. I could feel every hard inch of him pressed against me, feel the heat radiating off his skin, the storm outside matching the storm inside us. His hands roamed over me, rough palms skimming my thighs, my hips, my waist, memorizing every curve like he was starving for the feel of me. When his fingers found the hem of my camisole and pushed it up, his eyes locked with mine, asking a silent question. I nodded, small, shaky. Yes, God, yes. The thin fabric disappeared, tossed somewhere into the shadows, and then his hands and mouth were everywhere, worshipping, claiming, igniting fires I didn't know I still had in me. I arched into him, every nerve ending awake and screaming for more. There was no thought left, no guilt, no second-guessing, only need. Nathan whispered my name like a prayer against my skin as he stripped the last barriers between us away, bearing me completely to his gaze. And when he finally entered me, slow, deliberate, filling every aching, empty space inside, I cried out, clutching at his back, digging my nails into his skin. He stilled, giving me a moment to adjust, his forehead pressed against mine, his breath ragged. "You feel incredible," he rasped, voice thick with awe and something dangerously close to reverence. Tears pricked my eyes, not from pain, but from the overwhelming rightness of it, the terrifying beauty of being touched like this after so long. I moved against him, a silent plea for more. Nathan groaned, deep and guttural, and began to move, slow at first, savoring every thrust, every gasp that escaped my lips, and then faster, harder, as the tension between us unraveled into something wild and uncontrollable. The bed banged against the wall with each movement, but we were beyond caring, beyond shame, beyond reason. I clung to him, my body burning, building higher and higher until it snapped. Pleasure crashed over me in waves so intense I sobbed against his shoulder, my entire being shattered and remade in the same moment. Nathan followed with a broken groan, collapsing into me, his arms wrapping tight around my body like he could somehow fuse us together. We lay there tangled in the dark, our breathing slowly evening out, the storm outside finally beginning to fade. And somewhere deep inside, through the haze of sated desire, a small, terrified voice whispered, "You can never come back from this." For a while, we just lay there, tangled in each other, the silence thick with something we didn't dare name. The storm outside had quieted, but inside me, another storm raged on, a mess of guilt, fear, and aching want. Nathan pulled away first, gently, almost reluctantly, like a man waking from a dream he didn't want to leave behind. He pressed a soft kiss to my forehead, his fingers trailing down my arm in a touch so tender it broke something inside me all over again. Without a word, he stood, found his jeans in the dark, and slipped out of my room. The door clicked softly shut behind him, and just like that, the reality of what we had done settled heavy on my chest. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling the echoes of him everywhere. The heat of his skin on mine, the way his breath had whispered across my throat, the way his hands had held me like I was something precious. And beneath it all, a sick, gnawing certainty. There was no going back. In the bright, merciless light of morning, everything would be different. No matter how careful we were, how much we tried to pretend nothing had happened, we would never be able to erase the truth. We had crossed a line that wasn't meant to be crossed. I pulled the covers tight around myself, as if they could shield me from what I had become. Tears welled up, hot and heavy, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet, because part of me, a dark, selfish part, still ached for him, still craved the forbidden touch that had ruined me. And deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a much bigger lie. Looking back now, with years of distance stretched between that summer and the woman I am today, I can see it all more clearly. Desire is a powerful thing, beautiful, wild, intoxicating, but it's also blinding, can make you forget who you are, what you stand for, what you're willing to lose just for a moment's escape. That night with Nathan wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice to silence every warning bell, every shred of conscience, every plea from the better parts of myself. And the consequences of that choice rippled through every part of my life afterward. My relationship with my mother was never the same. Even though she never knew, even though we buried it under layers of politeness and Sunday dinners, something inside me had shifted, something I could never get back. Trust, innocence, the fragile thread of who I thought I was. Some mistakes leave scars you can see. Others, they carve themselves into the soft, hidden places inside you, where no one else can touch, but where you feel them every single day. I don't tell this story to excuse myself, or to romanticize what happened. I tell it because it taught me something no gentle lesson ever could, that crossing certain lines doesn't just cost you guilt in the moment. It costs you pieces of yourself you might never reclaim. If I could go back, would I choose differently? I'd like to believe I would, but desire is a liar. It whispers that what you want right now is worth everything you could lose tomorrow. Sometimes you don't realize the price until it's far too late, and by then, all you can do is carry the weight of it. Tell me, have you ever faced a choice so dangerous, so tempting, that you knew, no matter what, you would never be the same afterward? If you have, I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below, and if you found yourself reflecting through my story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay connected, because the hardest stories to tell are often the ones we need to hear the most.